Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Tutoring Business with me. I've been doing this podcast now for probably close to 2 years, and only a few times do I really talk about like my own journey into tuition. I think I did something quite early on where I went through my story from school into leaving school into growing a tuition business, because obviously that's quite pivotal for people to get to know me. But I think overall, like, I've never really gone backwards. And what I thought I would do is start back from my early kind of career, sort of from 1920 onwards, and give you a bit of an insight into, I suppose, what made me who I am today. You know, what happens in our early life really kind of lays the foundations for who we are later on. And we learn all the time. So I think like this kind of will give people a bit of an insight into just what it was like for me in the early stages of starting a career, starting a family, the kind of the ups and downs of life. And what I hope to get from, or what you guys would get from this, is just a bit more of an insight into the person you see and sort of listen to and connect with today. Well, and hopefully a few little things that you've not, those of you who know me even now, like have met me and had conversations with me in real life, maybe even things that you have never heard before, like a few new stories, and yeah, just a bit of insight really. So I moved out of home when I was about 18. I was about somewhere between sort of 18 and 19. And I was doing a college course and I met somebody and we moved in together and we started a family quite young. I did my first couple of years of my degree, but came out with a year to go. My degree was business. So business has always been something which I was really interested in. And even though I wasn't fully engaged as a sort of 19-year-old in the uni process, the idea of running a business was always there. Like, I liked having my own autonomy, even as a sort of, well, I think we all do when we're teenagers, but going into sort of being a young adult, but didn't really understand how I was going to do that. Or like a lot of us, actually, I would say, we don't know what the idea is. Like, we like the kind of pretend idea of, oh, great to be my own boss. It'd be great to have like almost like unlimited money, make my own decisions for me, almost be in charge of your own destiny, you know, but didn't have an idea. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Business in my mind, in my kind of late teens, early 20s, was product based. It was like, well, you know, we need to go and ship things in from China, or we need to find a resource somewhere that we could then like package up and sell. And often, almost like in my mind, because of the stuff I'd seen growing up, my granddad and my nan and granddad run a market stall, was very much product based. You know, they would drive to London, source their materials and their goods, they'd bring it back. They had like an office in their home where they would then do all the packaging and all the sorting, and then they drive out to the markets, 3 or 4 times a week. So these are the kind of things that I saw, and I saw the kind of life that they had. I mean, they wasn't rolling in money, but they also weren't living in poverty either, but they were working hard, right? So they did work really hard for what they had. But that was the kind of thing that I saw. And I think going into the business degree, there was an element of, well, I couldn't quite see how I would take what I was learning at uni, apply it in the real world and find success. I just didn't have that. I suppose the best way to describe it is I couldn't connect the dots. And again, I don't think I engaged with the course properly. We started a family. So we had 2 children by the time I was 20, and then a third one by the time I was 22. And so that little period of time was quite, I'm going to say stressful, but I mean, look, magical at the same time. But there was a lot going on. And I suppose from a priority point of view, my mind just went to go and get a job. You need to go and make sure you feed your family. You've got to make sure, you know, keep a roof over the head, do all those real kind of important things that we need to do when you've got a responsibility of children. So I don't ever feel like I engaged properly in uni just because there's other stuff going on. So I didn't have a typical university experience for that reason. But what it did give me, there was hardship there. And so what it gave me was like this resilience. Like, there's not a lot that I would face now, I don't believe anyway, that would be as hard as that time in life. That was a really tough time financially and for time and like relationship wise. And we came through it and it was all good. I mean, there's stories attached to all of that, like proper financial hardship, but it was really, really hard. And we relied on other people a lot. And as you can imagine, like, we were young parents, so we needed to rely on other people because we didn't have a clue what we were doing. You know, it was really quite tricky. But coming through that, like what actually led, and I think this was actually really defining, but I think having children is quite a defining point anyway. But having them so young, I can remember I took a year out of uni. I did the first 2 years, took a year out, and I worked for Matalan in a management training program, which I absolutely loved. I didn't particularly enjoy the retail side of it, but the actual training program was brilliant. There's stuff that I still use today, which was really, really amazing kind of techniques to manage and lead. Often some of the bits I even put into like the 12-week course because I just think it's stuff that I've used anyway. And when I reflect on it, I go, my God, I learned that when I was working at Matalan when I was sort of 20 years old. But children are like that defining point, and I always had it in my head that I wanted to work with children. Like it was just something which I really enjoyed. Like I enjoy being a parent, and having young children it sort of gives you an excuse to be immature and have like fun. And I don't know that I suppose that inner child part of me has permission to come out. And I had some great career advice, and I don't think this happens often in whether it's school or uni. I think often the careers advice that we are given can be very narrow and very much in the moment rather than looking at what the future's going to hold, like in terms of future jobs. The classic is always like, we should be preparing our children for jobs that don't exist yet. And we can only do that if we make them problem solvers and lifelong learners. But when we go for careers advice, they keep it very specific. I mean, luckily for me, like I'm gone really traditional. So I'd love to work with children, but I don't quite know how to do it. I think it might be teaching, but it might be other things as well. And so we had this amazing conversation with a careers advisor. And she was like, well, you need to go and get experience. And I didn't have any experience working with children at this point. I knew of children of my own, and that was it. And I was taking my stepson to school, typically late. And I was dropping him through the office, and there was a flyer on the wall, and it was like for a summer play scheme for an early years project. And so in the summer they have these summer play schemes. It's basically reduced cost childcare. It was the early years project where I live is a charity, and funded by or part funded by like social services, and then their own. At the time it was lottery funding. I'm not sure what it is now. And it was recruitment. It was a recruitment flyer. And I probably there because they wanted to recruit like TAs or teachers looking to work during the summer. Anyway, so I pick up the phone and I'm like, look, looking for experience. I don't really have any right now. Here's my, like almost like my CV really. And I had a chat with someone on the phone and I was like, look, we just don't have anything. We've recruited already. And so I was like, well, look, I'm looking for experience, and I'd really love to come and chat with someone about like what I could do. Is there a way of like doing a bit of volunteering? I kind of explained my situation. I was coming out of uni. I was about to finish. I think at the time I would have been working at Next on a Sunday morning, or perhaps both days over the weekend. And I was working at Sainsbury's in the evenings doing like a weird shift, like a 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. shift or something like that, or 7 to 11. I was like, look, so I have like this time during the day, like I can come and get involved, even if it's just a short amount of time just so you can get to know me. I can see what it's all about. Anyway, they were like, look, leave it with us. We haven't got anything, right? So leave it with us. And then maybe phone back in a month and we'll see what happens, because the summer takes priority and all the other things, because they do a lot of parent and toddler groups, which is not really doing them justice. They did a lot more than that, but let's just call it that for sake of ease. And they were sort of kicking off after the summer. You know, they almost like press the reset button and start again. And I was like, great, perfect. So I can work the summer in my normal way, probably up my hours at Next and Sainsbury's. Financially, we'll be fine. Degree's finished. I still had 6 months to run on my degree, but it was to do my dissertation. So this was kind of all working out. I had a bit of space to do my dissertation. I was working, fine. But bills were getting paid, basically. I think that's the most important thing. And there felt like a way forward. Anyway, the next day, the early years project phoned me back up and say, look, would you like to come and meet us? We'd love to meet you just to see what it's all about. And then we'll see what we can do for September, because there was this thing called a crash bank. There might be things that come up sooner. We can get you interviewed, get you like I don't know what it's called, NCRC check. Get all that sorted, and then we can, make sure it's all ready to run in September. Perfect. So I went down to see them, and at this point I wasn't driving either, so I was on my bike around Canterbury where I live. So I ride my bike down to their centre, meet the people, and we had get on really well. We have this really long conversation, almost not like an interview, but more like a conversation. Do you know when you just get on with people? It was fine. Went really, really well. And then they offered me a job over the summer. They was like, look, we'd love to get you involved. I think this was probably like a male card thing. Do you know, like where males get we would love to have like a male role model somewhere. And like looking back, that's what I think happened. And they put me into a summer play scheme. And from the summer play scheme, this is like being like the sliding doors moments, like right place, right time, taking the opportunity that was there. And then I spent the summer at this summer play scheme just having the best time. I couldn't believe people were paying me to play games all day with children, set up cricket matches, football tournaments, playing Connect 4 all day, playing Just Dance on the Wii, just doing these amazing, I don't think it was the Wii, it would have been a PlayStation 1 probably back then. But these kind of things where I was just mucking about all day, just having the best time, and people going, oh my God, you're so good at this. I was like, what? Like playing dance on a dance mat? Damn right, I'm going to be good at this stuff. If you're paying me to do this, I am in like heaven right now. Going outside all day, playing football or cricket, and just engaging with everybody in like this really positive way. Honestly, I just couldn't believe this was a thing. But you can imagine, like I was really enthusiastic about this because it was just like the best job ever. And one of the funding partners of that early years project, social services was one, but Sure Start was another. And so they would come round every now and again, the people at Sure Start who had a local office, just to kind of, I suppose, from a promotional like thing, get some photos, make sure that they're engaging with the thing that they're paying for, because that would have been part of it with their own board. And I got chatting to somebody, and I was sort of telling them about like what was going on. Like after the summer play scheme, I was going to have to go back to work at Sainsbury's and Next. I'd given up those things so I could really focus on this, on the summer stuff. And she was like, well, we're looking to do something working with dads, and we think you'd be great. And I was like, what do you want me to do? It's like set up like basically a dads group and work in like the parent and toddler like type thing, but you lead it. And there was lots of stuff going on, and I had to like so basically I got a job from being there. And I think this is like really like the message behind it, what I'm trying to talk about today, or this is particularly what happened to me. There's often like pivotal points where you make something happen, like you decide to pick up the phone, you decide to have that conversation with that person, you turn up to have that interview, or you decide to put that job application in. You know, it always starts with an action that you take, and it then leads to more things, more positive things. And so if you ever feel stuck, I always believe like do something, like even if it's a really small thing, because you just don't know where that's going to lead to. So I'm going to fast forward now to when I'm sort of 36, 37 and I'm leaving the classroom. The one school had asked me to leave, didn't want me to come back, and I just remember feeling like just falling into that depressed state. And I don't think I was depressed in what I would consider that true sense, but I just wasn't myself. And I know I've documented this before, but basically in bed for quite a while, not really wanting to get up, not wanting to move, until there was like a flick one day where I just had to say to myself, do you know what? You can't keep doing this. We want a better outcome. You're going to have to get up. And it started with just getting up and getting dressed. And because this is how bad it was, getting up, getting dressed and going downstairs. And then that led to being able to open the front door and sort of engage with life again. And it ended up with being able to do the shopping. And it led to going to the gym and, you know, just what I would now consider quite normal things. But it starts with that first like idea of, you need to change something here. You need to get up and move. You need to get up and take an action somewhere. So that led me to that action that day, like picking up the phone, led me into working for Sure Start, which led me into working for Home Start. I met schools in the local area. I worked with social workers, social work assistants. We had like this primary mental health workers, psychologists. We just had like this big like multi-agency, because it was like back then, multi-agency approach to everything that we did on a local scale. And like those networks have really helped me. So by the time I was sort of 23, 24, and I'd been on that local kind of what I consider the local circuit, this was all like working with families with children who had children under 5 years old. I knew quite a few head teachers. I knew deputy heads. I knew social workers, social work assistants. I knew some of the like senior social workers as well. A couple of the psychologists I knew just through passing and attending meetings. I didn't know them really well, but I knew their name and they knew me. That kind of like the colleagues type approach to life. And I was just learning so much. All of this stuff ended up leading me towards social services, and there was a job that I'd heard about that was going to be in the paper. Someone had approached me. It's a full time, because at the time I was doing like home start a couple of days a week, shore start a couple of days a week, youth working. I was doing an after school club, a breakfast club, all these from different people. It was just when I look back now, it was crazy. I had like 5 part-time jobs to make up a full-time kind of week, but it was more than full-time. I was just working all the time. I used to have a little window in the day, sort of between 1 and 3 when nothing was going on. And then I was working till usually like 7 or 8 at night. So look, I think, again, the message here is that I wanted to put myself in the right spaces so I can meet the right people. That was an aim, because that was something which we spoke about in my careers advice. It was like, go and start connecting with people, go and meet people in this world, because that is going to serve you long term. So that was always in the back of my mind, like, what meeting could I go to? What could I be saying yes to that's going to enhance my knowledge, first of all, because I wanted to learn, but also put me in the room with people that have already made it or are making it and are, making big impact with children and young people. Which is what happened. So I heard about this job coming up in social services. It was a social work assistant post. By this point, my degree's done and dusted. It's all done and completed. Managed to come out of a 2-1. Don't know how, because I was failing quite badly at one point. But I wasn't really using my degree at this point. It was just all very entry level type work. And this social work assistant post came up. I heard it was about early intervention. So it was about working with school-based. It was working with children and families from teenagers. So probably year 10 down, I would say. I did work with a few year 11s, but mainly it was younger. So from year 10 down to kind of reception age children, sometimes younger if there was younger children involved in the family. And we would go out and we would assess. So a big part of my role in social work was going out and doing an assessment. And that was done through conversation. And we did this like training, which totally changed my life. It was something called the solid hold approach. It changed my life because it's such a simple process, but it just allowed me to structure conversations at a level where people would open up. And I feel like I'm quite an open person anyway. So this is something which I think is a natural skill. I'm a good listener, but also listening and then taking it on board and then responding. So not listening to respond, but actually taking notes. In this case, I wouldn't take notes if I was chatting to a friend, but I would hold it in my head, and then we'd have a conversation around just a general conversation, I suppose, in I would consider a normal way. But people open up. And this conversation, the way it was structured around the solid hold approach, and then what we needed to talk about with the assessment, I would come back with like an insane amount of information. And people are like, well, how are you doing this? And it was all based on this training that we did together as a team. And then it kind of gave me quite a lot of stock, because people were like, well, it was the first time I suppose I experienced a team go, oh, Richard's really good at this. Perhaps you should go and shadow him. Let's go and pick Richard's brains, because he gets this information and he seems to do it quite easily. And suddenly people were asking me questions. And to be honest with you, I felt like a fraud, because I was really just, I suppose, just being me at that point. I was like, I don't really know what people want from me here, but I will talk to them about this is how I do it. This is how I structure the conversation. But I also believe that we should be doing this in our own way. We've probably got our own style. But that was the first time I kind of experienced that kind of like, people holding me in esteem here. This feels very strange and quite odd. And don't get me wrong, I think there were times when people thought I was good at my job. I'm a hard worker, and I listen and I learn, I take things on board. But this was the first time at that level I would consider like a professional level, which led to just opportunities to do things like solution-focused therapy with families, which again was just such an amazing thing, where you take people from point A to point B just by looking and listening to what they're saying. So you might be looking for body language or the way people are responding, the words they use, and then reframing it in like a really positive way. So even when someone's talking negatively for 20 to 25 minutes, which is what used to happen, we could leave the room look at our notes and go, right, that's a positive. Even though there's no positives in here, we can reframe it into something that was. And when you bring something back into the room that felt negative to start with, and then you're reframing it into something positive, that is so powerful. And that is something that has stayed with me as well. So I bring that to this, like our community, because I think there is a lot of negativity around teaching. I think there and education, and don't get me wrong, the majority of it is probably warranted. But I have this outlook that we can turn that negative into a positive. We can take what we've learned, flip it around, and use it in such a positive way, whether that's like you using it for energy and fuel for your business, or whether it is just genuinely like looking back at what you've done in your teaching career and then using it to really accelerate your tuition business. So I feel that I bring those skills that I learned, like, and this was between the age of about 23, 26, 27. So good three and a half years I spent there with such an amazing team of people. Like, and I do thank these people a lot, like out loud here. I probably haven't done it recently, but there was a couple of people who really helped shape some key learning for me as a professional. There was Mary Wood, who was a senior social worker, and we was in an early intervention team, and she just drilled into us like the importance of early intervention. Now, often we look at early intervention like from a financially beneficial point of view, but and it is, right. So we get there nice and early. We try to enable parents to make positive change so that they don't fall into crisis, which does cost a lot of money to try and fix. But if we do this early on, it doesn't cost social services any money, doesn't government any money, or it might do, but just not as much. But actually, the emotional advantages of getting early, particularly for families who are on the cusp of hitting crisis, is so important, because what we experience and what we experience when we have like trauma or experience trauma as a young child plays out through the rest of our life. And if we can get in early and stop that, look, and I'm preaching to the converted here because I know you guys know this, but I'm really passionate about that. That's something which I've really taken with me my whole life. I think the earlier we do, we kind of mend these things, the easier. I think mend is probably the wrong word, but we want to go and support and make people's lives better. Right. So this is another thing I bring in. I think the earlier the better. I think that if you already know that you want to leave teaching and you're not sure how, like making sure that you find a safe space for you to come and either ask those questions as early as you can, start learning as early as you can, even if it's like your exit ticket. So how do I do this while I still teach full time? How can I do this and reduce my hours? How can I increase my business or accelerate my business so I can leave by Easter next year or by Christmas 2025, those kind of things. Start as early as you can. Right, early intervention is really, really key. Start learning, building up your client base, building up a waiting list, building up your knowledge of marketing, and getting used to hearing your own voice, seeing yourself on camera, all of those things, that the icky things that we might go, oh, no, I can't do this, because it is tricky at first. Start. The earlier the better. The first video you do won't be the best. The first time you hear your voice, yes, it will be horrible. But the more you do it, the easier it is, I promise. I don't particularly like watching myself or listening to myself at all. It makes me cringe. But it is easier now than when I first started a couple of years ago. Still make myself cringe. I barely watch my own stuff back because it's just. I mean, you hear actors doing this and it's their job, right? It is literally point a camera in their face and they come to life. But lots of them don't ever watch their own work. Right. Anyway, moving on. Right. So that was really pivotal part. And I saw lots of things and I connected with families in what I would consider real hardship. And I saw a different side to life that perhaps I was kind of shielded from. Now, I don't think I had a particularly wealthy upbringing, but I don't also believe I lived in poverty. The money was hard to come by. Like, as a child, obviously it's not my responsibility, but I know my mum and dad didn't have a lot of money, but we did have lots of love. And one day I'll do a little bit of a film around where I grew up, because it was so privileged in other ways. And I look back now and think, wow, I wish I could provide that for my children. Such an idyllic kind of place to grow up and live. But we didn't have a lot, but we had that. I saw a different side to life when I was working for social services, and it really made me appreciate my own family, my children, and also like what we were trying to do for our family as well. We hold education in high regard. Their well-being is important to us. We keep them safe. All those really. It sounds like, well, that's just what you should do as a parent. But the side of life that I saw, it's not like that for some people, and in some cases, it's not really a choice either. People are undoing their own childhood, and it's not easy for people. And so I bring that as well. Like, I know that it sounds really, from a business perspective, I don't want to kind of like brush over that and make that as light as what it sounds, because it wasn't, because some of that stuff was really heavy. But what I understand is that from a business perspective, like, we bring our own stuff, we carry our own bag of stuff that we have to sort out. I was stopping myself from swearing there. And you might hear someone like me, like on a podcast, go, "Oh my God, business is really easy. You just do this, and then it will grow." And it's not going to be like that for everybody. I mean, business hasn't been like that for me either. But for some people it is. And we look on and we see these people and we go, "Oh my God, they're just doing it right." But I could copy them word for word. I could copy them, their services. I could copy everything they do, but it won't work for me in the same way. So therefore it must be me. When the reality is what it is, we've just got things blocking us and they need figuring out. When we figure out those things that are blocking us, yes, we are then free to turn up and grow our business, and it will feel a little bit lighter, feel a little bit easier. But sometimes we do have this bag of stuff that we need to sort out first. Sometimes it's baggage from the classroom. Sometimes it's baggage from our childhood. Sometimes it's baggage from a previous relationship. It could be all sorts of things. But trust me, we can figure those things out. We all can figure those things out. Remember back at the beginning when I was talking about like taking the action. Take the action. What is it that you need? Is it like a talking therapy? Is it something more? Is it like, actually, do you just need a break? Do you just need time? Is it sometimes just a simple answer, but maybe it's difficult to get there? Like, for example, if someone said to me, just go and take a week off, I'd be like, do you know what? That would stress me out. If someone said to me, go and take a week off, that itself would make me anxious because I've got stuff to do. But actually taking time off just to stop, be still, just be me again. Don't be the business owner. Don't be dad. Don't be partner. Just be Rich. It sounds amazing. But just the thought of it now is making my heart beat a little bit faster, which probably means I need a break, right? So that probably is the sign itself. So that was social services. And then for a while, I moved jobs because I got quite frustrated at social services. I actually was going to be a social worker, and they were like I didn't have my maths GCSE. So something else which you might not know about me, I didn't have my maths GCSE or my science GCSE. I was quite clever at school. I was top sets pretty much all the way through. If I wasn't top set, I was set 2. Always within the ballpark of, this kid should be doing much, much better than what he is. I mean, you've probably said this yourself as a teacher to a parent, or it's probably something that was said about you, or you've got a child like it. And it's like, if this person would just apply themselves just a little bit more, they would jump up from their predicted grades of a C and they get a B, which makes life a lot more comfortable. I mean, I don't know what that equates to now. It's probably like a 6 or a 5, isn't it? 5s I know is a high pass. But I didn't really apply myself. So I just got obsessed with football. I thought I was going to be a professional footballer. I thought I was going to do something with sport. And I also got caught in the whole, like, I didn't think anybody else was revising. So I didn't. It's kind of weird space mentally as a sort of 15, 16-year-old, which resulted in only getting my English GCSE. That's the only GCSE I left with. So when this opportunity came up to do a master's in social work, fully funded, paid, I was like, this is an amazing opportunity. I really want to do this. I know, like, you need to get your maths and your science GCSE, which was a year's study. I had to go and do it through adult ed. Science I did do through the college, slightly differently. And again, there's a whole story around that about networking, which helped me out because they wasn't going to let me on the course. I bumped into someone on the way out, went to the college, came out, like, they said no. Bumped into somebody who I kind of knew through somebody else, and they recognized me. So, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh," I explained it all to them. And they went, "Well, come with me." So I followed them back into the college, and about 10 minutes later, I was enrolled on the course. The guy who I bumped into on the way out was head of science at Canterbury College. And so he had the power. Like, how, and I look back again, like, sliding doors moment, because I probably would have, I don't know what I would have done actually, because I was walking out like so despondent. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. But I did, and both GCSEs were sorted within sort of 8 or 9 months. Went back to social services, said, I've done what you've asked. And they went, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. And that's what made me go, oh, do you know what? I feel like I'm just waiting around for other people. Now, go back to what I was saying in the beginning about this whole business brain. Like, I wanted the thing about business, and I think that we all kind of have that dream of that it's going to bring us some kind of freedom, that autonomy to think for ourselves, but also then we're ultimately responsible for ourselves too. At that stage, I just felt that everything was in favor of the employer. And I'd done exactly what they asked, and yet still wasn't enough. And I was like, you know what? That was a bit annoying, a bit frustrating. And I did really feel it. And I think I don't say I downed tools as I was working with children and families, but I certainly wasn't the same person. And within 6 months, I'd left. And I used my degree. There was a job that came up in the wider council, the KCC, Kent County Council, and you had to have a degree to apply. It was better money. It was almost double what I was on. And I went for it. And again, this was a last minute thing. I saw the advert and I think I had a couple of days to apply. I did it all, got an interview. And again, it wasn't my job. That had been promised to somebody else. This is a story for another time, because there's a lot more to that. But I turned up, rocked the interview, and I think by accident. But I think this is where communication comes in and the whole kind of mindset. I did really want the job, but it was a big drive for me. Like, it was about an hour and 20 minutes every day, just in one way. So sort of, good part of 3 hours a day traveling, particularly with traffic. And I was just a bit unsure. And even though it was double the money, I was like, oh, I don't know. And it was a lot of time sort of spent on the road rather than doing work. And also it's slightly different to what I was doing before. It wasn't quite in the same ballpark. It wasn't working with children and families anymore. Still school-based, but very much as a management kind of role. And but they convinced me, because a lot of the work was from home, which back then wasn't a thing really. But I didn't really learn anything. No, I worked there for 3 years, and the financial crash happened at this time, the 2008 financial crash, or 2009 financial crash, and the contracts were never going to be renewed. So I kind of lost interest in that. But it wasn't particularly an interesting role. Like, I think about what I was doing in my early 20s, working with children and families at the heart of everything, being really busy, working with social services, with high-end, I say higher-end needs, higher end than what I was used to. I wasn't a high-end sort of in social services, but it was challenging work, and I was learning things all the time, and it was fast-paced, really suited my personality back then. And then going into this job, it was much slower. Like, I was only really super busy during half terms, because we would put on these events for the local communities. And I just found it. I mean, I loved the people. People I was so lucky with people I worked with, I think. Like, just really inspirational people, really knowledgeable people. But it's just, I didn't learn in the same way or the same rate. And I feel like I kind of wasted those years. To be honest, like, worked from home so much. I was barely in a team. And so that kind of felt very disconnected. Anyway, that contract was coming to an end. And then the story kind of comes full circle, because in that first kind of chat with the careers advisor at uni, and they were talking about putting yourself in the right room and meeting as many people as possible, it came to fruition again. Now, I'd been working outside of Canterbury for about 3 years, just over 3 years. And I found myself with no work, because the contract was coming to an end. They wasn't going to renew. There wasn't a lot of work. There wasn't a lot we could do anymore. Like, there was no legacy for the role that I was doing. So we were literally just twiddling our thumbs, not doing a heck of a lot. And that just wasn't me. So I got in contact with a health visitor that I used to work with quite a lot. We used to deliver training. And I was like, look, I am sat at home most days with nothing to do. What have you got coming up that I can come and help with? Like, I just need to do something. And she was running some Solihull training, which is what I used to do with her previously. We'd run quite a few courses together. She said, would you be up for that? And I was like, 100%, because I love it. Like, I just love teaching it. And also just gives me some focus. I'm just sat here literally just watching TV or playing PlayStation, like, because there's nothing to do. And I got involved. And the very first course that I delivered, there was a head teacher there that I knew from when I was working for the Early Years Project and Sure Start. And he was like, oh, Rich, it's so good to see you. We haven't really, crossed paths for ages. So I used to go into school a lot with him, particularly for social services. So I'd kind of worked on and off with this head teacher for sort of 4 or 5 years. You still want to be a teacher? And I was like, yeah, kind of in the plan. explained the situation. Contracts were coming to an end, and just not really sure what I'm going to be doing in like 4 or 5 months' time. I'm looking for work, but there wasn't a lot out there. Anybody that was looking for work during this time will know, like, if you have a financial crisis like this, just businesses just shut up shop. Just go, right, let's just steady the ship. That we're not going to do any growth. We're just going to see if we can maintain, particularly when it's like that kind of crash. And he was like, well, you still want to be a teacher? And I was like, well, I'd love to, but I don't quite know how to go about it, because I can't take the drop of having no money coming in. We at this stage, so we'd had our 4th child by then. Tallulah had been born, and so she was only little. I mean, she would have been maybe 2 months old when I was delivering this course. Maybe she's maybe even only a month. And he was like, well, come do it at my school. We do this thing called GTP, Graduate Teacher Program. We pay you a salary. It won't be what you're on now, but it will get you through the year, and then you'll be a qualified teacher. Remembering I've got my English, my English, science and maths now under my belt. So we're all good to go in terms of those things. And literally by the end of the next week, I'd gone in and spent a couple of the mornings at the school. The head had helped me write the applications to Christchurch Uni, and the board started rolling. And it comes back to taking that action again. Like, when I was twiddling my thumbs, not doing anything, I was like, you know what? I wonder if that health visitor's got anything going on. And I just picked up the phone. I think I sent an email, actually. I didn't pick up the phone. And the answer was yes. Just sometimes it just takes us to go and take that action first. So just take some action somewhere if you feel stuck. And I know we can be afraid of it, and I know it can be scary, particularly if we are carrying around other things. Like when I was feeling like, oh my God, this is the worst ever. Like when I was just lying in bed, not really doing much when I first left teaching. And I had to give myself a talking to, and it's a short, sharp shock. Like, you better get up and do something here, because this is not you. You need to make something happen. This is what you would usually do. Get up and usually do what you usually do, right? And then something will work for you, or you'll just move something. And that's what happened. And I think by a couple of weeks later, like, it had all but been confirmed that yes, we've got a GTP candidate. Here we go. Christchurch accepted me. They did an interview. It was all good. And from a teaching perspective, never looked back, like, from that point in. And actually spending time at the school, it just felt like home. And it's somewhere that I still miss, actually. I don't go back as often. I used to go back quite a bit and to say hello to people, but it is somewhere that I really, really miss. So that's just a little bit of a background, like, of where I've come from. And I think that it's important that we all do this, right? Because I know, like, for me, saying this out loud, I mean, there's stuff that I've not spoken about, like some of the financial hardship that we went through sort of between my age of, say, 20 to 24. Some of it was just quite worrying and quite stress inducing. But I look at it now and I think, we were meant to go through that. That's really helped me with the resilience in the business when we go through, like, the usual peak and troughs. If I'm hitting like maybe a slow time, I had a really slow time in September 2024, really slow start to the business. And it was quite tricky. But I wouldn't have reflected back on the fact that we had financial hardship when I was between the ages of 20 and 24, but there were skills there that helped us get through, without a doubt, that was learned. And in a way, it feels like a comfort zone. So when things go bad, like, I'm okay with that. That feels okay to me. Yeah, there might be times when it becomes, oh my gosh, it's really hard work, but throw it at me, because I've been there before. It was a lot worse and a lot more critical when you're trying to care for 3 children under the age of 6. And there's no money left, or the gas runs out, and you haven't got the fiver, the emergency's gone as well, and you haven't got a fiver to put on it to sort of bring it back up to zero so you can put the lights back on, or put the gas stove on so you can cook, that kind of stuff, like the real proper hardship. So when it gets bad, or it's deemed bad, I look at him and think, do you know what? I'm okay here. I can live with this amount of uncomfortable and carry on, and I can still function. We're okay. Whereas I tend to worry about those who've not had that before, and then hit the It might be the first time they've experienced it, and then that brings the worry. So I feel like I'm quite robust in that way. I'm not in other ways, definitely not, but in that way I am. And that's another thing that I bring. Like I really bring that whole, like, let's talk about your whole story, because it all plays a part. You might not need to say it out loud. You know your own story. You've lived it. And then you own it. And sometimes looking back at those things can really help you understand some of the decisions you make. I struggle now with like financial decisions. I'm like, oh, I don't like debt, because I spent a lot of time building up debt in my 20s and then spent the rest of all my 30s basically paying it off. But I think debt can be a good thing. I don't think it's this evil monster that people make out. But I will often live in the financial hardship a bit too long before I go, do you know what? I can just spread this payment out over 6 months and not worry about it. I can do that. Why was that not in my head originally? Because I've held on to all of that kind of knowledge from my 20s, which made me really nervous all throughout my 30s. And it's probably time to let some of that stuff go. You know, I'm okay financially, and I can stomach it if it gets to that point. We'll just spread it out over 6 months. It's fine. But what is it for you? I'm asking that question now. Like, it's been great to share this with you, because I think it's always good to get to know the person that you're listening to. It's not all about business. We all have our kind of lives that we've lived, and the things, again, we're carrying around with us. What is it that you've lived that you've held on to, or still holding on to, that might be holding you back? What are you holding on to that's actually really serving you? I know that financial pain that I lived through sort of does a little bit of both. Sometimes it really serves me well. When it's really tough, I'm not uncomfortable here, I'm okay. And other times I might make the wrong decisions because of that financial hardship that I experienced. So it kind of does a bit of both for me. What about you? What's happening for you that you got similar stories, you got similar experiences? I'd love to know. If you found this interesting, please send me a message. I always love receiving messages from the podcast. But I thought this was something a little bit more personal to share. I haven't done this for a while. It's something that I'd like to do a little bit more of over the next kind of 6 months to 12 months, just because I think it's just quite a nice thing to do. Right. Anyway, I will speak to you all soon. Again, I'd love to hear what you got from this. If you've got anything, if you resonate with any of that, please reach out. I'll speak to you all soon. See you later.